Barrens is very unique in a couple of things. It is so thick and impenetrable in places that the procuring of game is difficult. You not only have to be an excellent tracker, but you have to be very, very aware. You've got a lot of difficult terrain to negotiate when you're dealing with these animals. Though the Pine Barrens have edible medicinal plants available, in the wintertime especially, these are few and far between. Its climate is also one where it's got a high humidity, and you compound that with winds and cold weather, and you're dealing with a cold that tends to penetrate, a killing cold. And in the summer, you have the opposite. There's areas in the Pine Barrens that have no water. The sun reflecting off the sands just will burn holes in your head.
Here we got a fox, left front track of a fox, and he's slowing down from a run. You can tell by how deep he is in the heel. You can see the oval shape in here of the track.
Tracking is a window to the past. You can tell more from an animal's tracks than you can tell seeing that animal with the naked eye, because in the ground is left a portion of that animal's history, a chapter of its life. You can tell how much an animal weighs exactly, whether it's right or left oriented, whether it's male or female, whether it had any injuries, exactly what it was doing and where it was going, whether it had eaten or is going hunting.
This whole thing has got rolls all over the place. We got our first hare, but it's a rabbit hare. That's enough.
But it could be weasel or mouse.
There he is, there he is. Look at this plant here. All scraped, all butchered by deer feet. It's an unnatural abrasion. When a trail comes out like this and goes into a lot of little runs all the way down and through, it's called a manifold. It's like a blood vessel. It splits on the main vein and goes out into the capillaries. Look underneath these bushes. You're going to see a lot of trails. If you people believe everything I say, you're fools. Your job is not to believe me. Your job is to prove me right or prove me wrong. And I bet you can't prove me wrong. Survival, or at least the skills to survival, are only half of what survival is all about. You're looking to strike a balance. You're looking to fit in, to become part of this whole thing. No, one with the whole thing. So that your presence in any landscape is not a detriment, does not destroy, but enhances the landscape. When you go into a survival situation, and my hopes are that after this class, for once in your life, you say to yourself, I'm taking a weekend, I'm taking a week, and give yourself the biggest gift you can give yourself in life. Go to the woods, drop all of your clothes except for a set of shorts, and walk in, and say, Mama, take me. You will establish such a connection to the earth like you have never felt before. You'll realize in a real way that everything that you sleep in, everything you eat, all your medications, all your clothes comes from the earth. Nothing else you can do in nature will show you that.
I think what Tom brings out is a tremendous appetite for life and a joy in living. And particularly, you know, living in a caretaker kind of way is, you know, like, take care of our families, we take care of our loved ones and everything. I just had to find something that would teach me how to live outdoors, because there were no ways for me to take in conventional society. I think conventional society is already pretty overburdened. They have a lot of homeless people on the streets that can't take care of all the people. And I thought maybe I could help by helping take care of myself in a natural setting. And what's already existed for a long time and what hopefully will exist forever.
Well, as you can see, this is our first day here in the Pine Barrens, and we're building our debris huts. And the name is self-explanatory, because all you do is use the debris that you can find on the ground, dead trees or whatever. We don't take anything live. And it's just a ridge pole and then some cross joints.
There's only one shelter that, known to man, that will keep a person warm no matter how cold it gets, or cool no matter how hot it gets, without the use of any internal heating device such as a fire, or any bedclothes such as sleeping bags or blankets. In a survival situation, you just don't have these things a lot of times. So a debris hut is like a huge insulated shelter that will insulate the student or the survivalist from the elements, keep them warm even if they have nothing, no matter how cold it gets, no matter how hot it gets. It'll never get hotter than body heat on the desert, and it will never get colder than body heat in the winter. So it's essential, it's critical. It's the most paramount skill that a student can have. Without a shelter, in many cases, you're dead. When I was a child, 7 years old, I lived on the outer northeastern edge of the Pine Barrens. My backyard literally extended from the back door to Camden across the wilderness called the Pine Barrens. And where I grew up, there was nobody really to play with. You were in the woods. So people did one of two things. Kids, they either went to town or they went in the woods, and I went in the woods. Well, I met this other boy in the woods, Rick, and we became pretty good friends. And it wasn't long after that that he introduced me to his grandfather, Stalking Wolf. And his grandfather was a full-blood Apache tracker. And for 10 years, I lived here with him.
The skills of awareness that I learned in the woods are skills that I can apply in a city, in my practice, in my patients, in picking up information and picking up subtleties in a person's body, in their behavior, in their talk.
What I've learned here and what I will continue to learn here are some of the old methods, and I will be more secure with myself, more at peace with nature, and certainly feel more comfortable and feel more connected to the earth, which is really where we all are, even though we don't realize it sometimes.
People kind of learn a new respect for the things that are provided for them, and with that respect kind of comes a protection of the earth. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can get across is not only a self-confidence in learning how to use the things out in the woods, know how to build your fire, your shelter, and be more self-sufficient, and thus being more independent and relying on yourself.
When I was using drugs, it's like I was in my own world, withdrawn from everybody. And I never talked anything out, you know. The drugs themselves were a mask. Now that I don't use drugs anymore, I had to learn to reach out to people and to reach out to people means I have to ask for help when I feel down, depressed. And here I'm able to do that because there's people that understand it with similar backgrounds here.
Okay.
So if he's good, let him
I'm good too, man.
Oh, okay. Do it.
You do it.
Do it.
That's looking good.
All right.
I was looking kind of school and teachings that are not connected to a kind of military survival, but are connected with nature, like really having a setup which gives you an effective tool of living with nature.
Making containers in the woods or in a survival situation is extremely difficult if you go with the old methods of pottery and basket making that will, baskets that'll hold water. The Apaches had water baskets. The easiest method by far is taking a slab of wood and burning into it a depression. The slab of wood will hold water, it'll hold hot liquids. It's easy to make. Phyre makes it. You do no carving except to scrape it out when it's done with a rock, to scrape all the char off it. And it makes a very fast container for cooking, for eating, for whatever.
No, we enjoy it.
Any skill that you develop helps with other things, whether it be patience or whatever, it will relate. Just by having a better awareness of the land and how the land operates will give you a better sense of oneness with the earth, and that can bring you a great deal of personal satisfaction.
This type situation, which is more based on the American Indian or Native American philosophies and things, with the Aboriginal philosophies and methods in Australia. Quite frankly, they're very similar, both ways. Philosophy and the methods are very, very similar.
I've always wanted to. I've always had that inkling and these kind of feelings for doing this. Yet I've never had the guts, I guess, to do it now, nor had the teacher. See, I've always thought I would find a teacher sometime to help me break through and do it and just go live on nothing with nothing. And then I ran into Tom and it was like, boom, that's it. That's the name of that tune.
Grandfather's philosophy of survival was simple. You don't fight nature. You don't fight the elements. When I see backpackers go into the woods, I get this impression of people landing on the moon. Watching them bring all their earthly possessions in, and without them, they could never survive. We lose them by the dozens every year. Survival teaches you to know yourself intimately as well as the earth. And you can bring that back to society. Because the same things work there as they do in this reality.
What Tom does in some of his lectures would be it's a very good acting job. And I don't mean acting in artifice, but I mean acting in the sense of when he's telling stories, a lot of times he's reliving being in the story, which is the primary goal of an actor.
That's all, nothing more, till Christ comes about Larry or the case, as long as I'm here. Now get out of here, George.
An actor is continually trying to live out another person's role. Not his, but a role that has been written with different circumstances, different background, different history. And you have to take yourself out of yourself and explore that other reality. It's totally applicable in a way.
Out of the 23 primitive methods of building a fire, the bow drill is the most effective because the bow drill can concentrate a lot of body energy to produce that coal, where other methods do not concentrate that much energy. They're a little more difficult to make. They don't work well. But out of the 23 methods, the bow drill is the most effective, no matter what the weather. After the bow drill is burned in, you have to lubricate the handhold, because if you don't, the handhold's going to burn through. The handhold is going to get hot. So you lubricate it with whatever you can find. Body grease from the sides of the nose, from the chin, even from behind the ears, so to speak. Even the hair will lubricate it enough. Pitch from a pine tree, various slime molds that will also lubricate a hand drill.
Your first fire is like, oh, God, this is it. And you get that first fire. From that point on, you'll never have trouble with fire again. We're going to be giving you pieces of wood that are blocks of wood. You're going to have axes and your knives. Certainly not going to have you do it with rocks the first time out. We'll teach you the use of rocks. But don't get the idea that, wow, I need a piece of wood like this and this tall to make a bow drill. You'd be forever.
All your knives in there. Now. All of them. Cheese, the whole thing. Now, you will break up into groups in a moment because each group, 1 through 6, is going to make the apparatus for a bow drill fire. And the entire thing has to be made with rocks. You know, those. So you're going to have to break them into various scraping devices, and you're going to have to make them. Now, you got 50 people doing it, 6 groups. So I would suggest you organize, find out who's going to make some really volatile tinder. Remember, when you make cedar tinder, it's got to be mixed with something. Who's going to make the bow, the drill, the fireboard, the handhold, who's going to get the grease, and who's going to make the cordage. No axes, no saws, no tools. And you've got 1 hour. If there's no fire in an hour, there's no fire until Sunday. There's no your shelter back until Sunday. There's none of your clothes until Sunday. You will sleep exactly like you are until you get a fire.
All right, we need cedar. Who wants? I'll go collect cedar with someone from the swamp.
I'll go with you.
The
drill is the most important. Somebody help me get the stuff and I'll do cordage. All right.
Who's good at stone
I can do the stone. I did this a couple
All right,
weeks ago.
why don't you get a stone axe? Then we got the handhold.
gonna meet it
Handhold.
back here.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Okay.
Handhold and the drill and the board. Let's go.
All you have to do is to blow that tinder bundle to flames.
And one of us has to be watching.
One of us has to be watching.
Hey, Tom.
And I want you to all do it along this road so we can keep an eye on you.
If we can get like a branch.
Where's Jennifer at?
Should be able to use this as a firewood. There's enough wood there to run the bow drill onto.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, how far we gotta go here? You got another one?
Yeah, not great.
Quarter inch.
Is your bundle ready?
Rub on my chin.
No grief. Make sure you get it. I'm gonna hold it so nobody does the wrong side here. Earwax, earwax. Anybody got earwax?
Hey, take out my face, man. I got
How about toad hair? Toad hair. Hey, that's crusty powders. Okay, now put it on, down on the floor. I want it cold out of here.
Don't smother it.
Bye.
It's gonna burn if it's dry enough.
I love it.
Right here.
As I said, we're going to get into camouflage heavier as the day progresses. It's a necessity. The basic camouflage that we taught you during those two classes is like mediocre at best compared to scout camouflage. What is coming will blow you away. When we camouflaged, we said that you have to choose an area. In other words, from a distance. Now, this is for set camouflaging. In other words, if you're going to set hunting, waiting for something, you need to pick the location from a good distance away. A good distance away. Check for shape, color. Then find a specific area and know exactly the position you will take. Once that is all taken into consideration, the first thing you do is dull down the skin. Mud is a dulling agent. 2, clay is a dulling agent. 3, ash is a dulling agent.
Under the nose.
2 years. It's the bird, you know?
You can always see that tattoo.
Shoulders.
Remember to get your neck right up underneath your chin.
Yeah. People, in that bucket over there, there's charcoal.
What about it?
All right, good.
All right, let's get
Go camouflage. Instructors will help you out. Go, real good. Now look, hey, before everybody goes out, yo, as I come up, the camera will be following me. Stand up when we tell you, okay? You can follow us all the way up. And then, before you go down to wash off, I want to talk to you, so we got to wait through this segment. Come on.
So don't get up till you get the okay.
I'm telling you, you can't.
Come on up, bub.
You can't even see him when you look. Come up, Sam.
All right, Sylvan, come on up.
Oh, there you
Just anybody over there. There's so many people around. Try to stay behind me, everybody.
Damn, I never knew that was there.
What did he say, Ralph? Good.
Right here.
Is that Neil?
Good camo there, buddy.
That's Bill.
Welcome up.
But wake up, Bill.
Wake up, there's animals here.
Just now? Couldn't tell with all that camera.
There's nobody there.
Where? Over here. Take a look at this. Our attitude toward nature is that we own it, and we can rape it, pillage it, and plunder it at will. Nothing has a right to live other than people.
What we don't realize we're doing is we far exceeded the carrying capacity of the land. We don't live in harmony and balance with the earth. What have I done for my grandchildren? What have I done for my children? Have I saved them a portion of the earth so they can enjoy it as I have? Something miraculous happened. My baby was born. 3 months after he was born, I went, I picked up my little boy and my sacred pipe, and we drove off down to the Pine Barrens, just me and him. I remember him all bundled up. And I brought him back down this long pathway to our sacred area, and this area is special. It is one of the most gorgeous areas of the Pine Barrens. The stream was so crystal clear, you could swim in it and drink at the same time. The pines were just gorgeous. The cedars were like a cathedral forest. And it was where Grandfather and I spent a lot of our time. We had, that's where I took my first sweat lodge. I attended my first pipe ceremony and so much else. And as I turned the corner to get into the area, it was garbage as far as your eyes could see. The only place I had to lay down my baby was on a pile of garbage. And I realized right then that my own child would never know the Pine Barrens I knew. In fact, he would never know any wilderness I knew, even 15, 20 years ago. I realized then that we are a society of people that kill our grandchildren to feed our children. And I know that somewhere in Grandfather's mind, he knew what was going to happen that day. Because I made a commitment then that I wasn't going to run back to the woods. I was going to start a school to try to re-educate people. You can do all the sign carrying in the world and all the petition signing. It's not going to save the wilderness. Only through re-education can we save the wilderness.
Like to talk to me. Welcome back. I'm Kent Manahan. You've been watching Journey to Survival. And joining me now to take your phone calls, Tom Brown. Tom, thank you for being with us this evening.
You're welcome.
We're going to leave the phone number up so our viewers can phone in and ask you some questions this evening. Let's tell the viewers that number. They can call 1-800-722-6588 and speak to Tom Brown. But in the meantime, I have a question for you. Tom, you said in the documentary that we just saw that we are a society of people that kill our grandchildren to feed our children. That's a very powerful commentary on our society today.
Definitely, it's almost a global consciousness. We make decisions today that will affect our grandchildren. We don't even think of future generations. We tend to think of now and taking care of the now and taking care of our children. We never think of our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren. What kind of legacy are we going to leave them? Are we going to leave them a legacy of pollution, of destruction, of acid rain, of an earth that is no longer tolerable to live on? Or are we going to leave them a legacy of wilderness, of clean water, and a good lifestyle?
We have a caller who's waiting to speak to you. Andy from Forest Hills, New York, has a call for Tom Brown. Andy, go ahead with your question.
All right, thank you. I just saw the show, and I also read your autobiography, The Tracker, last year, and I was very fascinated by that. I was wondering, do you still run these classes? How would someone sign up?
Yes, I do still run the classes. I have a class going now. You can you know, just right to my school. The information can be gotten here at the station. We still run every other week, 35 to 45 people in through the classes.
What do you do in those classes, Tom? Give us an idea.
It's
we saw
four
some of it.
parts. It's in 4 parts. We have 15 different levels of classes, starting from the basic to the most advanced, called the expert. We teach survival, tracking, nature awareness, and the Native American philosophy of living with the earth, as one with the earth.
James from Fort Lee has a question for Tom Brown. James?
Yeah, hi Tom.
Hi.
I was out the other day fishing there in Hudson River, and I take a lot of walks and all in the outdoors. I was wondering about something, the best protection for insects, i.e. in this particular case, because I found one on me when I got back, ticks. What's the best bet for protecting myself against insect bites?
Tick bites?
Out there?
Oh, there's a number of things you can do. If you want to go to a chemical, which I don't really approve of, you could use any of the insecticides and spray your clothing, tie off your pants, or tuck them into your socks. What I prefer is an internal insecticide. An internal insecticide is something that you eat that renders your skin tasteless to insects. In the past 10 years, I have had 1 tick on me, and I have not been bitten by a mosquito, mainly because I take a lot of B vitamins, but natural B vitamins. I eat a lot of natural food whenever possible. And by doing so, it makes your system so that the insects aren't attracted to you for some reason.
What you're saying is a whole re-education of ourselves in order to survive in the wilderness.
Definitely.
Okay, we have a call from Easton, Pennsylvania. Will you go ahead with your question, please?
Hello, Tom.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for your show. It's very interesting tonight. I'm with the Boy Scouts, and our particular program, we're trying to get programs like yours started and fired up all through our entire district. Some of the problems we run into, as you said, some kids either go to the woods, some go to the city. But trying to take the city boys and bring them into the woods is extremely difficult. And trying to teach them some of the ways. We're looking for some knowledge and some training and things like you have to offer. Can you give us maybe some more information?
Yes, definitely. If you were to contact my school, you could get a hold of me or one of the instructors, and if you could get like a meeting together of various leaders and even like a one-day workshop, I could easily send an instructor out there to teach the boys how to build shelter, fire, find water, how to track. It's a really neat program. It's like a service that we provide to the communities. So all you have to do is contact our school and we could set something up, or even in some cases educate one of the scoutmasters in an area. Have them run through my standard class. Then he would be capable of going out and working with other people to make it a very definite science and art form.
And that information is available here at NJN this evening. Yes, in addition to your school also. We have another caller. Mark from Philadelphia has a question.
Hello, Mr. Brown.
Hi.
It was a very interesting program I just saw. And although I'm a New Jersey native, I've just moved into the city of Philadelphia. And I find myself somewhat overwhelmed by a lot of the garbage and things that I'm confronted with. And I'd like to know what you think a normal, everyday Joe kind of guy can do to leave the world a better place for our next generations.
There's so many things we can do. When you buy products, look at what you're buying. Look at how they're packaged. Think about what they're going to do to that packaging. Like when they say recycle, what does that mean? What does it cast into our atmosphere? What does it do to recycle that? Shouldn't we choose a different kind of product that is not so hard to go back into the environment? Anything you can do. I'm a firm believer in that if I have to go to the city sometimes to see my publisher. If I'm walking down the street and I see a piece of paper, if I pick up 1 or 2 pieces, I feel that I'm at least doing something.
We were saying before, Tom, a re-education is what we all have to do. If we all did one thing a day,
right,
in terms of re-educating ourselves and then carrying that out, we would all make a contribution
Most
to the
definitely.
environment. All right, we have another call. Fred from Gloucester City, go ahead, please.
Hi, Tom. I was curious, how do you feel about the locals cutting down the cedar trees and all the lumber and taking it out of the forest like they do?
How do I feel about the cutting of cedar trees and stuff in the pine barrens? I'm what you would call a very hardcore environmentalist. I don't see too much left, especially in the Northeast, that could stand too much more cutting, if any. I have seen forests cut when I was a child, and they're supposed to reseed themselves like the cedar forests and grow back up. All they are today is a wasteland. In order to get those cedar forests back, my students and I, when we go down there on a class, are actually planting cedar seedlings because they're not reseeding themselves. And I think there could be a lot stricter controls on the way things are cut. I've seen too much poor forest management on individual parts. Like a person who owns a tract of land does not have the right to wipe out all the cedar. They should make it mandatory that the cedar is replanted, or it's not going to grow up.
In the last couple of weeks, we've heard so much about the environment with Earth Day last Sunday, and we've heard that we should all plant a tree in order to make a contribution to the earth. But you know, my kids were saying, I had never even heard of Earth Day, or barely heard of Earth Day before this year, 1990. What's taken us so long, Tom?
I think that it was like the gas shortage way back in the 70s. It took the gas shortage to make people realize, geez, we better economize here or we're going to lose it. I think that the environment has gotten so bad with dolphins washing up on the beach, hypodermic needles, there's practically no rivers that you can swim in and drink the water anymore in the whole country. People are just finally fed up. They're looking around, they're saying, uh-oh, we're losing it. And now the new consciousness is beginning to resurge. Back in the 70s, Earth Day was kind of like a fad to many, many people. It still may be to many of them today, but I find there's an undercurrent of people that are starting to really raise their consciousness and starting to really look around. It has got to affect the lives of everybody, in order to evoke any kind of a change. There must be a grand commitment, not just a token day set aside. What happens the day after Earth Day, the day after that, the day after that?
Well, we have a question now from Karen from Turnersville. Your question, please.
Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Hi.
I have really enjoyed your TV program. You know, I find it give me a lot to think about. And I have a question for you, please.
Sure.
I know that you have books full of information and lots more to say. I just wonder, will you be making any more TV programs after Earth Speaks?
Yeah, we are in the planning stages to produce several TV programs dealing with skills, like the things you saw tonight, like how to build a shelter, how to loss-proof yourself or loss-proof your children. And most likely we're going to be doing it right through NJN. And right now we're just trying to arrange funding, and we should be starting on that shortly. Thank you.
Tom, you're known as the tracker, and you've sought missing people and certainly criminals. What does a tracker do? Give us an idea.
I am usually called in on a case. The scenario goes that somebody goes missing or a criminal takes off to the woods, and they can't find this person, and they exhaust a lot of different efforts, police and search and rescue teams, and then you finally call me in. Now, I actually follow footprints through the woods, much like a dog scenting the air, but I follow the footprints. And from those footprints, I find the person. And now I find that a good part of my students in my classes, I'd say probably about a quarter, are police officers, law enforcement agencies military even, and search and rescue groups.
Is that something, is that an ability that just you have?
No,
or
I teach people every day.
So we can develop this?
Oh yeah, in our
that
busy season.
Sense about...
Sure. In our busy season, I get 40 calls a week sometimes. I don't go out anymore. I pick up the phone, I call one of my standard students, person that's just had one class, and they go out, find who's missing, that easily.
All right, we're going to go back to the phones. We have a call from Catherine from Westmont.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
I lived in New Egypt we were there for 50 years down in the Pineland, and I was wondering from you, we were kids then, is it still safe to go back there and walk around?
Definitely. Definitely, most definitely.
Okay.
Just stay away from the heavily traveled trails that a lot of people tend to use to get in and out of the woods. I'm not saying now all four-wheel drives and dirt bikes down there are unconscious as they run through, but you can sometimes get a bad element in certain parts of the Pine Barrens.
That's not what we expect to hear, though.
No, unfortunately.
What goes on in the Pine Barrens?
Oh, it's unbelievable. There is, when we were taping the show that, in fact, we'll see next hour, the sea of garbage that is just in this one area near our camp. We hunted sometimes for hours just to find a place where we could do a panoramic shot and not pick up a burned out car, discarded syringes, beer cans piled up to almost my height in some places. In some areas of the Pines, people want to get back into the woods, but they don't know what to do when they get there.
The irony of it all, I mean, as you say, they're going there to seek a shelter of sorts, to be alone, perhaps, get back to nature, and yet they're leaving things behind that they brought in. Why not take it out?
Yeah, that's, I'm a big one for that. I mean, it's just, there's so much garbage down there. If some enterprising person with a pickup truck went down there, in one day, he could fill, less than a day, in probably 2 hours, could fill that pickup truck just with beer cans, aluminum cans from one campsite.
How do you re-educate an adult to that frame of mind?
You've got to get them back to the earth, to a point where they realize that they are connected to the earth. No matter how far up in a building they live, no matter how far removed from the earth they think they are, all our clothing comes from the earth. All of our food comes from the earth. We are connected to the earth in such a real way. The Native Americans call the earth Mother. And when people can reestablish their connection to the earth, they are not going to destroy the earth, because it's like their own flesh, their own mother, that they would be destroying. My fear is as people get removed, they lose that connection, they lose that consciousness, and they're then apt to destroy it.
What kind of people seek out your school, Tom? Are they people from the city, people from the farms, from all over the country?
From all over the world. They're from all walks of life. We have just about as many women through my classes as men. They're professionals, a lot of them, housewives, house husbands, bums. I mean, every kind of person comes through my school. I could not even say, this is a typical person. They come from all walks of life. Some people have spent tremendous amount of times in the woods. We've had Maine guides through our school, guides from the Sierras through the school. We have people that have hardly spent an hour a month in the woods through the school. Everybody gets something out of it, and everybody is there for their own reason.
That individual challenge must be part of it, too.
Definitely.
I've conquered something. Take us inside that and tell us about how people feel once they have conquered nature, in a sense.
Well, they don't really conquer it. They live with it. What I think people realize the most is when they come out of a survival situation, they realize that they are the captain of their soul. They are given a choice in life. Survival teaches you have choices. If you're cold, you build a fire or a shelter. If you're hungry, you find food. If you're thirsty, you find water. You are the one that decides. You have a choice to starve, or you have a choice to eat. That kind of thing carries to this society. We have a choice. People come to me in my class and they say, Tom, I'm miserable, I hate my job. And I look at them and I say, why are you choosing that?
They look at me and they say, what do you mean, why are we choosing it, or am I choosing it? I say, you have a choice. If you don't like it, change it. Change it. And survival teaches you that. Survival teaches you, once people learn survival, and they've got that in their back pocket, so to speak, it's an insurance policy. When people go back in the woods today, they have the backpacks on, the heavy clothing. If they ever lost that backpack, it'd be like the man on the moon. Somebody walking on the moon, losing their spacesuit. They perish. Every year they perish. I have to go in and track them. When a person knows how to survive, they are so comfortable, so at peace, they find a different reality. Even when they bring their backpacks back, just knowing they can do it makes the difference.
I think we all want to sign up now, Tom. Let's go back to the phone. Susan from Hackensack, a question for Tom Brown, please.
Yeah, my question is, if I live in the middle of Hackensack, Bergen County, New Jersey, I'm so sympathetic to what you are saying and how you live, and I've gone camping, everything. How does somebody who lives in my situation convince other people that they should start living that way, accepting me if I want to be a non-polluter, want to be righteous, want to do everything? Help.
If you could just reach one person and take them out for a walk in the woods, take them into that serenity, that separate reality, take them out of the rush of civilization, and just reach that one person, let them feel the earth, let them understand the earth, and that is all you could ever do. You've just won a major battle. All of us would like to think we could reach the masses, but we can't. All I care about is reaching one single person. And if I can do that, all my time is worthwhile. Just think if this whole nation each reached a person, we'd have no more problems.
If we each tried to reach out to our children
Definitely.
First,
reach the children
to educate
first.
them. How important that is, Tom.
Yes.
To get them to come along with the right frame of mind for the environment.
Where the education has got to start. When the child is old enough to understand, that's when we have to change that thinking of our society, that thinking that we got to feed our children, but the grandchildren we don't even think about.
Diane from Moorestown has a question. Go ahead, Diane.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
This is Diane. I've been thinking about coming to your school. I've read the Vision and the Tracker, and I liked them a lot. And I've wondered, I'm a vegetarian and I don't eat dairy. I wondered if that would be a problem.
No, none whatsoever. We prepare the meals at the school, especially in the basic class, where if you are a vegetarian, we have a vegetarian dinner, lunch, breakfast, whatever, set aside for the vegetarians in the class. We get a lot of vegetarians through. So, you know, feel free to come. The food restriction is no problem. We've had blind people through my school who have been dynamic trackers. They track with their fingers. We've had people that are paraplegics through my school, just there to listen, pushing them on wheelchairs. I will do whatever it takes to reach a person. And the first class is a laid-back class. You know, you stay in my barn, you stay out in your tent on my front lawn, and we meet in a lecture hall, and then we learn something. We go out and we go running through the woods and practice the workshop.
Now, you say your first class, Tom. Does that mean you come in for a few hours? What is
No.
the day like? Or do you spend the night? Do you
All
come
my
for a
classes
week?
are 1 week.
1 week.
In other words, you'd come on Monday and you'd leave on Sunday. And the first class, called the standard class, meets up at my farm in, I'd like to say my farm, the farm we lease up in northern New Jersey. The rest of my classes meet down in the Pine Barrens, and that is levels of advancement. You can go 2 or 3 ways in my school. If you really like survival, you take the advanced survival classes. If you really like tracking and awareness, you take the advanced tracking and awareness classes. If you like the philosophy, you take the philosophy workshops. So it's a branching type of thing, but there's 15 other classes.
All right, we have another caller. Bill from Levittown, Pennsylvania. Your question. Bill, if you can hear me, can you give your question to Tom Brown, please?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Okay. Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Hi, Sue. My question is that I heard New Jersey has the best marshlands in the world, and I wanted to know where I could find them as far as wildlife goes.
We have some absolutely gorgeous marshlands. Brigantine Wildlife Sanctuary is outstanding. In fact, Peterson in his bird book mentions Brigantine Wildlife Sanctuary. The areas of Barnegat Bay set aside, the estuaries there, and then if you go inland to the freshwater marshes, southern New Jersey, in Cape May, there's just gorgeous marshlands down there. You can have your choice of the brackish water estuaries or the freshwater sphagnum bogs of the pine barrens, which are just loaded with wildlife. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. In Brigantine, at various times of the year, the snow goose migration is so thick they look like it's snowing. You can barely see the sky sometimes.
All right, we have a call from Philadelphia. John, your question?
Yes, Tom, I was wondering, how do you handle the problem of drinking water? Being a city person, and then as well when you're, out surviving, what do you do?
There's several ways. They're so technical it's very hard to explain right now, but you have a number of choices. Not to be glib about this, but the primary way is what's called a dew wipe. You actually wipe the dew off the landscape with a rag or a cloth that you make out of bark and wring it into your mouth. You have the option of a solar still. You have the option also of various plants that contain a lot of water, such as your bull thistle. Various vines can be just snipped at the end and a continuous flow of water could be had. Also, there's ways of purifying the water that you find in natural catches and seeps and rivers and streams. You could do it through a solar still or a primitive filtering device, which works very well.
Tom, we were talking before about what the school offers, what your school offers, and you mentioned a survival course for those who are interested. I'm interested to know, what is a survival situation like? Is it emotional? Is it painful? How do you prepare for it? What's it all about?
Survival is the way mankind is supposed to live. People look at survival and they say, God, it must be so horrible. No way. It is a utopia. When your skills are good, when your skills are up to par, the biggest problem in survival is gaining weight. It takes you 1 hour a day to fulfill all of your needs. The rest is playtime. And I have survived all over the place in some of the most hideous weather conditions with and without students. And I've never heard a complaint. They love it. It's a reality where you become timeless. There's no clocks, there's no have-tos, there's no shoulds. You are free to wander, gather what you need.
The ultimate escape.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, Jim from Jackson has a question for Tom. Jim, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, hello, Tom. How are you?
Hi.
Tom, my question is probably a very straightforward one. After all you've been through, after all that, I guess, the Earth has been through, do you feel that we still have a chance? Do you think that we still can make it? And even though you've said all that you have and everything that we can try to do you really believe we're going to make it?
I do, or I would not be teaching. The day I believe we're not going to make it, I'm gone. I say that to all my students. They will get a 3x5 file card in the mail saying, I'm out of here. But I believe that all of us, if we just do something, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. But it's going to take a whole shift in consciousness, a whole shift in global consciousness. And it doesn't take that many people thinking the same way to get that shift to occur.
We have time, I think, for at least one more caller. Joan from Haddonfield, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom. My question is, we're always talking about re-educating the adults, and I really believe that if we work with the children, then we would have adults someday in the future that wouldn't need to be re-educated. And I was wondering in your programs if you had room for any children at all, or if it would be appropriate for a parent to want to do the program with a child, if you would allow that.
For a long time now, I've been running this school for nearly 13 years. I have only educated adults, doing children's programs rarely. And I believe that if the adult comes through my school, they'll take it home to their children. But fortunately, last year, we opened our children's school. And it is just running pilot programs right now. It's run by one of my instructors, Wanda, and she is putting together a phenomenal program. It met with fantastic success last year. Plus, she's starting a family camp. The family camp allows the whole family to participate in all the skills of the outdoors, the awareness, the loss proofing, even to rolling in the mud and just having a great time. And I think it's going to be a big success. So yes, there is, it's called Tracker Kin, and you can get the address right through the station here also.
Can become a family affair,
Yes,
Tom.
it
well,
can, very
we are
much.
just about out of time, and we want to thank you for being here, but tell the folks out there not to go away. We'd like to thank our callers, of course. We can't answer every call. Our apologies to those who did not get through this evening. But coming up, our documentary, The Earth Speaks. It celebrates the Earth and was shot entirely here in New Jersey. We hope you enjoy it. I'm Kent Manahan, and thank you for being with us. Stay tuned.
Earth Week on NJN is made possible by General Public Utilities, using energy to keep the light on Earth Day every day. Bringing you closer to the environment. This is New Jersey Network. WNJT, Channel 52, Trenton, viewer-supported public television. New Jersey Network programming is proudly supported by ADP, a major provider of computing and information services to American business. Earth Week programming on NJN is made possible by grants from Environ Corporation. As environmental consultants, Environ helps protect and preserve New Jersey for future generations. National Starch and Chemical of Bridgewater, a leader in adhesives, resins, specialty chemicals, and specialty starches. And Roan Palenque, using science and technology to make every day Earth Day.
Our attitude toward nature is that we own it, and we can rape it, pillage it, and plunder it at will. Nothing has a right to live other than people. What we don't realize we're doing is we far out exceeded the carrying capacity of the land. We don't live in harmony and balance with the earth. What have I done for my grandchildren? What have I done for my children? Have I saved them a portion of the earth so they can enjoy it as I have? This is where it all began over 30 years ago. My best friend and I used to come down here to the water, and along with us came his grandfather, Stalking Wolf, a Native American from the Southwest. Stalking Wolf taught us how to survive in the woods, how to stalk in the woods, how to track in the woods, and how to be aware. It was here that the earth first spoke to me, and I understood as a child. Trouble is today that very few people understand the earth anymore. Very few people know how to communicate with her. Our feet as a society tend to be removed from the soil. We live an encapsulated existence, removing ourselves from the earth and its forces. We live in buildings. Our feet are propped up and away from the earth by heavy shoes and by concrete. We don't know how to listen anymore. We don't know how to become one with the earth. Today, the lure of wilderness is still there. It's still intense. But yet when people get back here, they don't know what to do. So they bring back with them their rush of society, their campfires, their four-wheel drives, their destruction. They try to find solitude here, but instead, they destroy the earth. Take a journey with me. Take a journey with me back to the earth and listen to the earth speak, and you will understand. One of the first things that Grandfather taught us about moving in the woods was to slow down. It was a technique that he called the sacred silence, the silencing of a man's mind and his soul to meet the heartbeat of creation. Too many of us tend to rush through the woods, speeding by and trying to catch schedules or taxi cabs. When you walk into the woods, you have to let go of all that outside world. You have to open up. The mind has got to be stilled of thoughts. Grandfather referred to the thoughts as ripples on a quiet pond that distort the images. When your mind is clear, it's like the surface of a quiet pond. There's a pure reflection. There's no disturbances, no qualifiers. There's no definitions or analysis. There is no time or place. There is just you and nature. But like thoughts, the winds stir the surface of that pond. One of the ways that we can get into this slowing of the sacred silence is to foxwalk. Today, mankind walks through the woods with heavy shoes, chasing those schedules. He brings the rush of society back into the woods with him. And in so doing, he hits heavily on his heels. He's forced to look at the ground because his weight is committed to his steps before the step is even placed on the ground. A better way is the foxwalk, the way that the Native Americans used to walk. A walk that is slow, flowing, almost as a dance. The foot hits the ground with just the barest of touching, and it is rolled to muffle all sound. The body can then be held erect and the head upright because the feet feel the ground. There is no need to look at the ground. Our eyes can look around and see all the things that we would normally miss. Fox walking teaches us to slow down. And by slowing our body, we slow our mind, and we walk as one with the heartbeat of creation. In this society, it's no longer necessary to be sensory aware. It doesn't take much sensory awareness to drive a car or to look at a television set or to read a magazine. We're no longer a society of hunters and gatherers where our senses have to be sharp and keen. Essentially, our senses are becoming dulled and atrophied from lack of use. If you were to stay at home and in bed for the next year and never leave that bed, essentially you couldn't walk in a year. Well, we're doing much the same things to our senses. And we can prevent this from happening to our senses if we develop an exercise regime that we exercise our senses much like we exercise our minds and we exercise our bodies. When you're out, when you're in the woods, or even when you're in the city, push your eyesight. Look for shape, color, texture, shadow. Look deeply into the landscape. Look from the minute to the majestic. The Indians described it as being as the mice people, to look at the tiny things and appreciate the tiny things. Then allow your vision to expand to the majestic. Look for shadow, areas of negativity, areas of positives, and force your sense of seeing to work. With your sense of smell and taste, smell the environment, smell the flowers. Take in the whole bouquet of fragrances in a field. Define one and follow it to its source. In your sense of taste, take time to taste your food. Be like a wine taster, tasting water. Look at it as a wine taster would. Look at the color of the water. Smell it, and really savor it. Touch the landscape. I dichotomize the senses of touch into that you touch with your hands and you feel with your body. Feel the wind in your hair and the sunshine on your back. Feel the areas of dampness as you walk through the landscape. Touch a flower. Touch the bark of trees. Touch a leaf or a bud. But with all of your senses, concentrate on them. Expand on them. Make them work. With your sense of hearing, listen to the whole symphony of sound and then take and separate one. Define just one sound out of that whole symphony and follow it to its source. Only by working those senses in a workout, much like we do with the workouts of our bodies, can we ever hope to keep them from getting dulled and atrophied. When people walk along a trail, we have been trained in our society to focus, to use tunnel vision on something. And when mankind looks at something, that is all they are seeing. In this tunnel vision, we cannot pick up movement. We tend to miss so much of what is around us. Instead of using tunnel vision, we have to expand our eyesight, expand it to our ultimate peripheral. When we do this, our eyes become very sensitive to movement all around us. And when we catch a movement, then we can look and see, and see more animals this way. Animals are constantly moving, and that is the only way to pick it up, through the wide-angle vision. We've talked about the sacred silence, the art of silencing our minds so that it is like a clean photographic plate. We've talked about fox walking and slowing down. And we've discussed wide-angle vision and varying our vision. But I think one of the most important things we can do if we really want to get into nature, if we really want to see it and understand it, is to just sit down someplace or to just wander, following our heart. to go without time or destination. As soon as a person has a destination, they're looking so closely at that destination, that goal, that they miss everything else. We should just wander aimlessly, without time or destination, and that way we see everything. Tracking is the natural extension of awareness. Tracking is more than reading a set of lifeless prints in the ground. When you look at that trail, you are seeing a sentence or a page or an entire chapter of an animal's life. You can see things that you cannot normally see with the naked eye. It gives a certain depth to awareness and a new dimension to observation. Everything on the landscape is speaking to us. Every mark, every broken twig, every dent in the ground. It is like letters of an alphabet stringing together sentences of an animal's life. Come with me now and let me help you read that book. One of the best ways to start teaching yourself how to track and in reading the earth is to find soil such as a sand road or soft ground or mud that really holds a track well. And what we'll have here is a whole story etched in these sands. It's very clear. It isn't the difficult tracking like you get in areas that are covered with pine needles or leaves or grasslands or things like that. These are clear, and it's great for a beginning tracker to start here. Plus, you can unravel the stories and the scenarios that have taken place. Tracking, like I said, is a window to the past. It is a window into an animal's actual movement, so that in the final analysis, you can actually feel that animal still moving through the tracks. A track is the end of a string, and at the far end, a being is moving, dropping a hint about itself every so often and always captured in these tracks. Let me show you what I mean. Take this track here. A yearling had followed its mother across this road, probably about 4 o'clock, 4:30 this morning. As you can tell by the various degradations on these corners of the track called peaks, You could tell that there was wear marks. You can tell that there was dew on these tracks. Now, in this little guy, it's not just a track that runs across the road. It isn't just that this deer is a yearling, but this track contains an entire story. At this point, this little yearling, who was behind his mother and to the side, stopped for a moment, hesitated, and turned a little bit to look down the trail, possibly for danger. The next track from this shows a great deal of hesitation and worry. Now, the mother at the same time, because the little yearling paused here, the mother at the same time stopped, twisted, throwing out these great big, what we call plate fissures, which is a topographic map in and around a track, turned to look back over her shoulder at the little yearling to see what the problem was. Finally, another deer comes walking across this way at a later date and also pauses, probably belonging to the same troop, but we're talking a few minutes later. But as you see, a story builds here. A story of a mother deer, the yearling, and probably another yearling that has come through, all stopping at this point to check danger, check looking to the left. Now that tells me as a tracker, something caught their attention. Something caused this movement, these animals, to look down that trail. Could it have been an oncoming vehicle, an oncoming hiker, maybe another animal? Something made them walk from this point on very cautiously. And we're going to follow this trail out into the heavier brush to see what they do from this point on. As you can see, I've been following these deer along this trail that I've been walking. Now, I found that the two yearlings have now joined up and are following the mother. But you're looking at where I'm standing and you see pine needles and oak leaves and twigs and branches and debris, and you're saying, how can he track through this? It's very simple. Apaches can even track on solid rock. There's a simple concept to it. Everything leaves a track in every medium. You just have to know how to look for it and what to look for. Once I show you what to look for, you're going to be seeing tracks on any type of soil, whether it's covered with debris or not. Now let me show you this example right here. I have a beautiful little track of the female deer. Now to the untrained eye, this looks like debris. But to the trained tracker, this is a lot more. As you can see, this debris in here is broken unnaturally. Some of it is actually kicked around and scraped in. And you can just barely make out the point of the doe's footprint. Now what we can do is once we establish this as the footprint, we can begin to pull this back. Pull the debris out of the track very carefully. And now we have a beautiful track. As you can see, where her foot had cut in, here and here, the perfect heart-shaped depression of that mother deer, that doe, as she walks through. And again, I can see where she twisted and pivoted and turned as she went off. Debris is very much like a sponge. When you push on it, it'll jump back, but not its whole way. And underneath, there is always that depression, as you see here in this deer track. Most people feel that tracking animals is just dealing with following footprints in the soil. That's only half the story. The other part of the story is called sign. The one thing you learn about animals is, like us, they're always going to take the easiest route of travel, except when they're pursued. Now, you get in a lot of animals taking that easy route of travel. They're going to wear pathways into the earth. And all of these pathways have names. Right now, I'm sitting along a deer trail. This is a deer trail that's probably been used for 25 years. It's so wide at this point because 3 separate trails come into it. A deer trail is like our superhighways, our expressways. The smaller runs are like our back roads. Other signs that are embedded into the landscape and across the landscape are chews, scat, bedding areas, lays, pushdowns, meaning areas where animals have taken flight. And it opens up a new world to someone who is walking in the wilderness. When you can start reading these trails, runs, pushdowns, beds, and lays, you start to see the animal population in a totally different light. You get to see how they flow across the landscape. Grandfather always said that the animal is like an instrument being played by the landscape. And you can see how that landscape influences each animal's life by reading the signs. Now let's move to some examples to show you how to read signs. This is one example of feeding sign. As you can see, the buds on this have been nipped off, kind of like in a squarish pattern, a little bit serrated. This tells me that it was eaten by deer. Deer have no top front teeth. When they bite and push their bottom teeth up against the roof of their mouth, and then they sickle this off, thus leaving a square bite. Here we have another example of an animal feeding sign. As you'll notice, this has a sharp, angular cut, 45-degree angle. This is made by animals that have incisors, such as rodents, rabbits, and hares. And how this is made is simple. The rabbit would lean up here, and with his incisors would snip that off in giving that angle. Now actually, these briars will not even hurt that rabbit. They're looking for the succulent centers, and they'll nibble down just a little bit, nibble off the briars, and then nibble off the whole piece. And it doesn't seem to bother them. As you see here, we have a well-used animal run. And on any animal run, you're going to come up with an assortment of scat. Now, scat to the tracker is another sign that has a lot of bearing on to the tracker. I mean, you can tell what the animal's been eating and what animal has deposited. These little round scats are rabbit, and you can see that they're very, very fibrous, especially at this time of year. Deer scat are very pellet-like, very, very pellet-like, unlike the round rabbit scat. And we know that the deer has also been on a non-succulent diet, better known as a browse diet, because it is so hard. And anytime you get a run like this, or even a trail, you're going to find all numerous signs, places where animals have abraded things, where they have kicked things out of place, where they have busted things. You can see little branches and stuff along here that have been cut and abraded and nicked. But everything to the tracker is a sign. Everything is telling them something about the animal, about the landscape, about what the animal is eating. We never want to overlook something like this. We've crawled into the bushes here, and as you can see, this very small little run here that goes right through these bushes has probably been used for years by rabbits, pheasant, other small rodents, and animals like that. Just a small animal run. It isn't very frequently used. So it would be classified as a back road. And this is the smaller types of runs. And runs vary with the size of the animal that's using them. Now, of course, no deer are going to come through here, so we can say, yeah, it's a small animal run, and it winds through the landscape. They like to stay in this heavy brush because the heavy brush protects them from predation. And this is also where they'll sleep and where they'll feed, and it only takes short excursions out of the brush to get some more succulent vegetation for their foods. This is their protected areas. This is a well-worn trail, as you can see, mostly used by deer. It's probably been used for the last 25 years or so. It's got a lot more activity on it than the last run that we looked at. Of course, it's used by bigger animals. To most people, this looks like any abandoned lot or field or even a median strip on a roadway. What we have here is the best of all lands for wildlife. It's got plenty of cover, as most fields do. It's got plenty of food. But you've got to know how to look for the animal signs in these type of areas. In tracking, we learn to look close. Right here in front of me, we have a trampled section of grass. It looks like it's got nothing on it except for maybe a few deer prints here and here, and nothing else. You say to yourself, well, where can the animals be? Well, there's an animal called a vole. Many people know it as a meadow mouse that lives underneath all of this. They have trails and runs and pushdowns and beds and lays, highways and byways that just crisscross fields like this. And voles are the most preyed upon animal around. You look for voles by separating the grasses. They live in their own little world beneath all of these grasses. People just pass these fields and they don't even know that all of these animals live within the confines of these fields, out of sight from man. These voles are the most single preyed upon animals. And everything eats them, foxes and everything else. And they live in these little tunnels. They like the grass and the soil beneath their feet. They work these tunnels so often that they begin to wear this little trough through the landscape. They're out of sight of most of the predators and out of the weather conditions. They like to live in the interface between solid ground and this leafy cover here that protects them from everything. And most people miss them. Most people will just pass a field and not see the wealth of wildlife that is even in an abandoned lot or a median strip between two roadways. Tracking teaches you to look close. We've been talking about tracking in the woods and in the fields and observing nature and communicating with the earth on those levels. But when people come to the beach, they see beach houses and sand dunes and jetties and shells, and they never think about the animals that live on the beach areas or underneath our beach houses. There's a whole array of animals that escape detection unless you know how to read deeper into the beaches than just the sand and the seashells and the waves. Let me show you what I mean. Now you see here that we have cat tracks on the beach. This is not just a house cat. This is a house cat that has gone wild, a feral cat. Mainly you tell the difference because of the patterns that these animals take. This is the normal traveling route for this animal, from garbage can to beach to garbage can to beach. And what people tend to do down here, which is sad, is in the summer they'll buy a kitten. It'll stay with them all summer, and then when they go back home to wherever they live, they leave the cats down here. So feral cats are becoming a problem down here. You can tell these are cats too by the very rounded footprints. Very, very round. There is no claws visible in the tracks. And all the toes in this cat track are the same size. We're going to go from here, and just a short distance over, there's a set of fox tracks coming through. And here we have fox tracks. They're different in size and shape than the feral cat tracks. Fox tracks tend to be egg-shaped, like all members of the dog family. The toes are all the same size. They exhibit some claw marks and various tracks along here. They have a longer stride. Now, these foxes live here summer or winter. They skirt the dunes in search of mice and birds and other things. Sometimes can even be seen in the early morning or late in the evening on the surf line, scavenging the beaches. Like the other animals that live here, they've adapted to man. They live right under his houses or under wood piles, and they come out at night when most people are asleep, and they're here all the time. The tracks, of course, is his signature. This tells us what he's doing, where he's going, and it's evidence that there's a lot of foxes down here. This whole dune area is just full of fox tracks. Let's go on and see some more. Small animals, such as this little rat, come out long after the beach bathers and the beach parties diminish. Theirs is the world of night. Here we see evidence of a small rat pulling a seashell along the sand. The shell apparently has been too big for him to pull. You'll see his rear feet here, front foot here, and here is where his tail hits. The tail is used as a balancing mechanism so that he can counterbalance the weight of that shell. Now, he is out in the middle of the open. Could be foxes around or weasels or anything else on this beach that could prey upon him. So what he's doing is he's very nervous, and he is going right back along this trail to his little rock house. Lives right within those rocks at the far end of the beach. Notice how close we are to beach houses. Now, most people think that on the beach there's just seagulls and a few other little animals. But right here by the beach houses, you'll see here that we have rabbit tracks. Now, this tells a whole story in here. This rabbit was coming along the beach early this morning with these two steps and slowed down. Then for some reason on the next sequence, he takes off and he gives a great big leap. Notice how the back end of the tracks are blowing out. Now, you got to remember with a rabbit that these two tracks are the rear feet, these two are the front, and he's going in this direction. He's going right up along in here. A rabbit moves in a galloping pattern, much like a running horse would do. You'll notice that a set of rabbit tracks are walking right alongside the dune here. These were made sometime early this morning. About 12 hours earlier than that, you'll also notice that a fox has walked by. This seems to be a major trail or run area where the animals tend to feel secure. You'll also notice that there's a lot of people tracks that seem to walk by those tracks and not even observe them. This is what you must learn to do, is to look at the etchings and the signatures in the earth, no matter if it's beach or woods or forest, wherever. There was two teachers in my life that made some of the biggest differences in the way I observed. One was grandfather, and one was an old fisherman. Grandfather and the fisherman, at the times that they taught me, did not realize they were teaching me. Grandfather was the first, and he taught me this lesson in a very positive way. I was about 15 years old. I had been with grandfather nearing 8 years. You know how sometimes you get so close to somebody that you don't see what they're all about? You overlook some of the most miraculous things about them because you're so close to them? Well, this is the way it had become with me and grandfather. Certainly, I recognized him as a teacher and all the fascinating things that he taught me. But I failed to recognize some of the daily habits that he had that went by unobserved. This one time he taught me, I don't think he realized he was teaching me one of the most profound lessons in my life. I was in the Pine Barrens alone. I was going to be there a week. And that particular morning, I woke up, and as usual, I went down toward the stream to meditate, to pray, and to relax before the day began. In fact, it's the same stream the camps use today. I sat on this little knoll, watching that stream as the sun rose, watching the mists, the beauty, the cedar forest. And I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. And to my delight, it was grandfather. I didn't expect him for a week. I was ecstatic. And at first, I wanted to run to him. But then for some reason, I just sat there and watched him. Certainly, I know he knew I was there. Little escaped grandfather, especially somebody so close. The concentric rings and movements of birds and things like that would certainly draw attention to me. But I watched him. And for some reason, I watched him through different eyes than I ever had before. It was almost like I didn't know him. And as he drifted down toward that stream, the only way to describe it was like he was entering the holiest of temples. I was so close that I could see his expression on his face. This utter rapture. And he went to that water and stood there for a long moment, searching it up and down, looking at the mists, the cedar swamps. And then he bent over and he touched the water. And the water seemed to respond. And he gazed into it, and then he began to pet it. And then he felt it. And he ran his hands into it and held it aloft, and I could watch it trickle down and dazzle in the sunlight. And I also caught the tears in his eyes. I was amazed. Here was a man who had traveled the entire United States, Canada, and parts of South America, had swam in the greatest waterways, had stood under the most magnificent waterfalls. And here he stood in utter rapture in some insignificant little stream in the Pine Barrens. What followed that was a slow and elegant baptism into that water. It shocked me.
It shouldn't have. It shouldn't have. Because this was nothing different than Grandfather ever did. He was like that with everything. I would hand him a cup of water, and he would take that cup, and he'd look at that water, and he'd move it, hold it up to the light, close his eyes, and he'd smell it, and then he'd taste it. He would put a wine taster to shame. No matter how thirsty, all water was savored. He would walk through the woods and touch the bark of a tree. Constantly, he was going through the landscape. His senses were in total rapture. He would fondle leaves. He would fall to the ground and part the soil and smell it. I remember once watching him. He was intently watching some sort of a bird that I couldn't see. And he looked, and he was watching, and like it was the rarest thing on earth, but I couldn't see the bird. I knew it was a bird. I heard it jumping around. And I was watching him watching this bird. And I'm talking a lot of time passed, 20, 30 minutes. Finally, I stalked over to him. I said, "Grandfather, what are you watching?" He said, "Robin." "A robin? That bird's like as common as dirt." I said, "What's so interesting about him? What's so different?" The bird finally flew off, and he kind of shook his head. He said, "It's a robin." I couldn't understand. He picked up a stick, and in the sand he sketched a crude outline of the bird. And he handed me the stick and he said, "Grandson, fill in all 38 black marks on that robin. 1 or 2, maybe. 38. What color are robin's eggs? They're not robin blue. There's 4 or 5 colors in them. What color are the spots on robin's feet?" And he went on and asking me more and more and more questions about a robin that I could not answer. And he said to me, "That's why I look at the robin, to know it." But I learned that day from him something he did so commonplace. I saw for the first time in almost 8 years. Years later, long after Grandfather had gone back to Mexico, I had just come back from a long trip. I hadn't been gone almost a year. I decided I was going to go to the beach, the ocean. I hadn't seen the Atlantic in nearly a year. And I went down in the darkness, and I sat on the beach and I awaited the sun to rise. And as the sky grew light, I looked down from me, and not too many feet away was an old fisherman sitting on his chair, watching the tip of his pole. The guy looked like that he had sat there for centuries. And I began to wander around. I sat down near him, and we started to talk. Beaches were totally deserted for that time of year. And we talked about tides and about the weather and about fishing, mostly fishing, and about seagulls and about people. And the guy told me he had been fishing that beach for nearly 33 years. And I immediately perked up. Wow. I mean, fishing was his first love. In fact, he had retired several years ago. And instead of just coming to the beach every weekend, he bought a house near the beach, and every day, except for the nastiest weather, he would come down and fish. And our conversation drifted off I went back to waiting for the sun to come fully up. He went back to watching the tip of his fishing pole. And I reached down as I sat in the sand and I picked up a handful of sand. And I started to finger through it, letting it glisten in the afterglow of dawn. And he kind of looks over and he goes, "What you got there?" In a mocking sort of a way. I said, "Beach sand." And he goes, "Oh, beach sand, it's gray and white. What do you want to look at that for? You never been to the beach?" And I was shocked. Gray and white. And I turned and I looked at him, and I hate to have disrespect for an elder. But I said to him, "Old man, do yourself a favor and look at the sand." And he just went, "Huh," and went back to fishing. Well, subsequently, the sun began to rise, and I hear this almost inaudible voice saying, "My God, my God." And I looked over at the fisherman, and he had a handful of beach sand, and he was fingering through it with a pained expression on his face, going, "My God." The sun came up, and I turned to leave, and I turned and I was going to wave goodbye. He didn't see me. He had a bluefish in his hands, a fish that he loved to catch. And he held it up toward the sun, and he was looking at it. I could see that sun glistening off that fish's back and off the tears in his eyes. I thought to myself, the horror. Here's a man who had fished this beach for 33 years, and for the first time today, he is seeing a bluefish. For the first time this morning, he is seeing the beach sand that he walked on. How horrible to be that close to death and never having seen anything. I know what was going through his mind. The words of Marcus Aurelius. It is not dying that a man should fear, but a man should fear never having lived at all. Realizing that the man was past retirement and had never really lived. He taught me. He taught me in a very profound way of what not to do. Of what not to do. I wonder how many people go through life and never feel the wind in their hair. Never really feel the sunshine. Have never really felt rough bark or bent down and smelled the earth. Or even touched the face of a loved one and felt it. It is not dying that a man should fear, but a man should fear never having lived at all. Every day, you're given a choice to be like grandfather or be like the fisherman. How horrible it must have been for him. I never saw him again. I wonder if the last remaining years of his life, he finally began to saturate his senses. He finally began to know sensory rapture.
10 o'clock, a film never before seen in this area. You will witness the experience of a cameraman who first entered the concentration camps holding Armenian prisoners. You will also bear witness to the British government's censor of the footage until the late 40s. Don't miss A Painful Reminder at 10 on NJN. For a copy of Tom Brown Jr.'s book, The Vision, send a check or money order for $7.95 plus $2 shipping and handling to NJN, The Earth Speaks, CN 777, Trenton, New Jersey, 08625-0777. That's $7.95 plus $2 shipping and handling to NJN, The Earth Speaks, CN 777, Trenton, New Jersey, 08625-0777. Visa and MasterCard orders, call 1-800-282-1822. Now, many of our own NJN productions are available for sale to add to your own video library. If you see an NJN program that you would like to own, please call our NJN video offices for information. If you're an NJN member, you are eligible for a special discount price. Please write NJN Video, CN 777, Trenton, New Jersey, 08625-0777, or call 609-530-5180. Earth Week on NJN is made possible by General Public Utilities, using energy to keep the light on Earth Day every day.
This is a New Jersey Network News Minute with Kent Manahan.
One of New Jersey's best-known lobbyists, the head of the State School Boards Association, Octavius Reed, has been accused of ethical insensitivity for keeping a lavish expense account. A report by the State Commission of Investigation recommends he be dismissed. 19 suspected drug dealers, including 2 Seagirt police officers, were arrested in raids in Monmouth and Ocean counties this morning. Authorities say the group is part of a drug distribution ring connected to the Jersey Shore. 3 executives of a Gloucester County manufacturing company have been indicted on federal racketeering charges. If convicted, each defendant faces a maximum 98 years and close to $1 million